Hey, I'm Lorelei, registered dietitian nutritionist. Welcome to my kitchen. We're gonna do a little bit more healthy home cooking in the kitchen with the registered dietitian today. So today we are going to be working with some greens. And I also was thinking about snacking because healthy snacking can be really difficult to do. Are you snacking?
A little nibbly.
Okay.
What happened here?
You'll never guess what vegetable we're going to be working with today.
Looks like a crime has been committed. Who are you? Doot doot hoo hoo. So where's the crime scene? I got a call to come in and take some forensics. Dun, dun, dun.
Who called you?
The veggie police. I'm a vegetable inspector.
You are?
Yes.
Could I see some ID, please?
Yes.
That was invisible. I'm a registered dietitian, and this is my kitchen. Yes.
Where were you? I'm guessing from the state of decomp on this kale that the crime occurred less than an hour ago. Would you object to giving a DNA sample?
But why would I need to do that?
Why would you refuse to do that if you're innocent?
What? What's the crime here?
The killing of the kale. Chalk out the outline here. Yeah.
There's no...
6 kale were found chopped. Would you care to explain this?
This is a knife you just pulled right out of the dish
Your
drying rack.
fingerprints are all over it. I can see it from here. This kale has been killed with a knife that precisely matches this one's characteristics.
I haven't chopped this kale at all. It's just come from the store in this way. I just washed it and set it out to dry so I could make some kale chips, sir! I'm just gonna make some kale chips. Is that a crime?
Motive means an opportunity. Tell it to the judge. I gotta bag this evidence.
No! I just want to make a healthy snack.
All right, I'm gonna let you off with a warning this time.
What?
Make sure it's very healthy.
Okay, and it's gonna be crispy too. Have you had kale chips before?
Yes, you've made it before. I've had them before.
Okay,
but,
we don't make them too very often. So you can have some kale for a snack.
Okay. I'm not gonna do that.
Why not?
Just raw kale doesn't appeal to me. What are you gonna do to it?
We're going to turn it
Besides murder it.
So I've washed this kale and I've laid it out here because I kind of want it to dry. I don't want it to be wet because it's going to be easier to crisp it up in the oven if it's not wet. We could just lay them out to dehydrate and dry for days and days.
What's option 2?
We're just going to bake them in the oven.
Oh, okay.
If you have a food dehydrator, you can do it that way, but I don't have one of those. Those things are expensive.
Okay.
And not part of most people's household appliances.
Sure.
Kale is a very healthy vegetable. You have hopefully heard of kale. It's very much old news right now, and kale's probably not even trendy anymore. But you know, nutritional value doesn't really have anything to do with trends. Kale, of course, is full of fiber, as you might imagine, just by its fibrous texture. Because it's so green, it's got a lot of pigmentation, and a lot of those pigments that make vegetables vibrant colors have antioxidant properties. Kale is part of the cruciferous family, which is known to be cancer fighting. Kale has vitamin K in it. Kale has iron in it. I mean, it's kind of a powerhouse. But kale sometimes is something that people don't really want to eat. When I used to work in a restaurant, we used to put kale on the plates as garnish, and I can't even tell you how much kale we threw away at the end of people's meals. But if you prepare it right, kale can be delicious alongside being nutritious. So you can make a salad out of it, you can put it in a smoothie, you can saute it in your dishes. But today I'm just going to show you how to make kale chips. This is not hard. You can buy kale chips in the store, but it's certainly cheaper to just buy a head of kale and make it on your own in your oven. You can do this in a dehydrator if you have one, but most of us don't have dehydrators. Most of us do have ovens, so that's how I'm going to show you how to do it today. The first thing is to wash your kale and then let it dry, get it dry. We don't want it to be wet as you set it up because otherwise it's going to steam more than it's going to crisp up in the oven. So that's what I have done with this kale. I have just washed it and then kind of just laid it out here to kind of help pat, so I could pat it dry a little bit more easily. I'm going to put it in this bowl here, but I'm going to remove the stems. So I like to remove kale stems just by going, and then the stem kind of comes out. And if there's a little bit of stem left, that's fine. I'm actually not going to break up the kale if it's like a piece like this. just because it's gonna shrink so much when we bake it in the oven. The big ones like this, I might break up a little bit, but I don't wanna break them up that small. They'll break more after they've crunched up in the oven. So I'm just gonna de-stem them and plop them in this bowl here. And then we're gonna season them. The main thing you wanna make sure you put on there is like olive oil. And you don't need to use a ton, but you want enough so the olive oil is gonna add some flavor and it's gonna help it to crisp on the outside. Things like salt and any seasonings, and you could just do kale chips with olive oil and salt. I'm gonna put some lemon on, and it might seem counterproductive to have dried off this kale and then add a liquid to it that's not, an oil. But here's the thing, there is iron in kale, and iron that is found in plants is more readily absorbed by our bodies if we eat it with a source of vitamin C. So lemons have vitamin C, so I'm gonna try to put some lemon with this kale so that hopefully, and we're making a snack. It's not the end of the world if we don't get all of the iron out of this kale. We're gonna get it in other places in our diet, or at least hopefully we are. But we may have a better shot of getting some iron out of this kale if we have some vitamin C along with it. All right, so let's just finish this up. I have turned my oven to 200. Now, I've seen a bunch of recipes that offer all sorts of different temperature ranges for doing kale, and you might not be surprised to learn the higher the temp, the quicker the cooking time, but the higher the temp, the more chance there is of burning or, just uneven cooking. So I'm gonna go low and slow. It's probably gonna take a couple of hours. I always want to say this is exactly the best way to do this, but I don't make a lot of kale chips, so it's always a little bit of an experiment in my kitchen, and you can do a little bit of experimenting too. If you want your kale to cook a little quicker, maybe go 250 or maybe 300, but just keep an eye on it because you don't want it to burn, you want it to dry out. I'm also gonna flip it halfway through cooking time just because I think it helps to get both sides a little bit more browned, crisped up, and you do want it to go until it is completely crispy, crunchy. You probably want to eat your kale chips within a short time after making them. Sometimes they'll get soggy later, especially if you live someplace humid, or if you put them in a bag and seal them when they're still warm. Sometimes some moisture gets in there and they'll get soggy again. You can re-crisp them in your oven, but if you want them crispy and fresh, you want to eat them shortly after baking. This bowl is really full. I don't know how well we're gonna do getting everything in here, but we're gonna add some olive oil. And like I said, we're gonna add some lemon and some salt. And then I'm also gonna throw a couple of other flavorings in there. So I think I'm gonna use some garlic powder. I'm gonna use some nutritional yeast. You could use like smoked paprika or cumin. There's all sorts of things you could put on here. Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna only be able to do half of this at a time. Too much in this bowl. And this was really just one bunch of kale. But you'll be surprised by how much it shrinks when you actually cook it. And I have some on the floor. There. Okay, so starting with olive oil. I'm not gonna measure precisely. I just want enough to actually coat these leaves. And I'm gonna do this first, and then hopefully everything else will stick because the olive oil is coating the leaves. This is a little different than maybe massaging kale for a salad where you're trying to actually scrunch it down. When you do it that way, sometimes the moisture will actually start to come out of the leaves, and we kind of want to avoid that because like I said, we don't want them to steam in the oven. We want them to bake and crisp up. As always, getting your hands dirty while you're cooking. You know what I might do for the sake of experimentation? I might do one batch with lemon juice and one batch without, just to see if they cook any differently. Because like I said, I'm worried that the lemon juice might make them steam a little bit more, but maybe it won't. So I'm gonna do this half with just salt and some seasonings, and I'll do the other half with the lemon. And I'm not probably going to be able to tell whether or not the ones with the lemon let my body absorb the iron better because I just don't have that kind of technology around here. But we're just gonna assume that maybe there's more iron absorption going on with the lemony ones. Wow, my hands are so oily. So some salt, a little nutritional yeast, and this will kind of give it a little bit of a cheesiness. I'm gonna add a little garlic powder. All seasonings are optional. Choose which ones make the most sense to you. And if you've got a big batch like me, you can do them kale chips multiple ways. And then when you put them on your pan, you want to put them in a single layer so that they're not overlapping as best as possible. You want to put them on something where they're not going to stick, because especially when you want them to flip, sometimes they get so thin and they literally just stick to the pan. So I'm going to use a silicone mat. You could use parchment paper, something like that, or just a non-stick baking sheet would be okay. Kale batch number 1. And see, some of these leaves are really big, but I can break them apart after they're baked, so I'm not worried about getting them really small pieces now. I might need more trays. They take up a lot of space. I think this works best with curly kale. There are some other kinds of kales that are flat leaf, but I think this is gonna be the best type of kale to work with. I'm gonna have to go to pan number 2 with just this first batch. Wow. So these are gonna go into the oven. So batch number 2. And like I said, we're gonna add a little lemon to this one. As we did before, olive oil first. I'll try to get the leaves all coated, then I'll add some lemon juice and some of the spices. As before, we'll try to get all of the pieces coated, lay them out on pans, and then I'm gonna put all these pans in the oven together and keep an eye on them, but I'm gonna try to let them go for about an hour on one side and then flip them and do an hour on the other side. If you don't have that kind of time, if you're just not gonna be home or you need kale chips within the next half hour, you're gonna have to go higher on the heat. That's the only way to do it. And you certainly can, you just wanna keep an eye on them to make sure that your chips don't burn on you. All right, and then when they're done, we'll have to see how they are. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours. These chips have been in the oven. Let's check them out. So many kale chips. I made a lot of these things out of just one bunch of kale. I did flip them once. I don't know if that was absolutely necessary, but I think you can do it just to make sure that both sides are getting done. And all right, so these are the ones that I did without the lemon juice. So let's see how they are. They're really crispy. They're like tissue paper almost. They're good. See, like you could eat all of these in one sitting. Here are the ones that I used lemon juice on. You can taste the lemon. There's that nice little vinegary zing I like. I think these took a little longer, and some of them look like they're a little bit, these ones look just kind of, I don't know, the texture of them, they're a little more translucent. I think they're just more oily. These ones, some of them look like they may not be quite as crisped up, but I think they're still pretty crunchy. So I would say if you want to use lemon juice, go ahead and do it, but you might have to cook it for just a little longer. Woohoo! We got a lot of kale chips. It's just a fun little snack. Yeah, I do like the ones with the lemon though. I like the flavor that it adds, so I think it's worth it. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. It really is easy to make these on your own. Of course, you can play around with going to a higher temperature if you want to, but 200 I think did really well. It was just a long, slow cook, and they're not at all burnt. They're really just dried out, and that's all we're really trying to do is kind of dry them out so that they crisp up, and you can just bite them. I like their sound they make. Like paper. Let's see if Joe is willing to eat a kale chip.
I'm suddenly on camera, even as we go, so this is part of the nutrition. I'm eating a kale chip for posterity, so it's good. I've had them before. They're like vegetable potato chips that just kind of crumble in your mouth. They're tasty though.
Okay, so try one where you're more excited about the kale chips.
I'm quite full. I don't want to keep eating things, but okay. Kale chips.
Good, good. We like
Thanks.
that one.
Okay, good.
You got the job.
Yay.
If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, please. Well, take care and join me again next time for more healthy home cooking in the kitchen. Bye-bye. See, like this one's still really big, but you can break it super easy and make it smaller pieces. Some of them have crumbled. This one's got a stem. Stem is a little chewy, so I would say avoid roasting the stems. Yeah, that didn't crisp up. There's no outline. As far as they can tell, the kale just goes back forever.
I see, okay. Well, yes, there's a lot of kale on the counter.
But if you crisp it up, it will be chip-like.
How do you do that? Just like...
Well,